So we've all been there. We're picking our kid up after school, or they come in and we're like, hey, how was your day? And we get that one word answer, fine. Here's what I've learned working with middle schoolers in Phoenix is that it's not that they don't have anything to say, it's just that we're not asking the right questions. And today we're talking about why middle schoolers shut down and how we can get them talking again. Let's be real about what's happening with middle schoolers. They're 11, 12, 13, and they're trying to figure out life. Their bodies are changing a lot faster than their brains can keep up, and they're just trying to figure out how to fit in. And if you're working with urban kids like I am, there's a lot of layers on top of that as well. Maybe they're code switching between home and school. They've likely got adult responsibilities that they're dealing with, and they're just not in a spot where they feel like they can open up to you, maybe because they've learned that it's not safe to open up to adults. Here's the thing we adults forget. Middle schoolers aren't mini high schoolers. Their brains literally aren't wired yet for the kind of emotional expression that we expect. The prefrontal cortex, that's the part that handles complex emotions and expressions. It won't be fully developed until they're in their 20s. So when we ask, how was your day? And we get nothing back, it's not defiance or disrespect. It's just that they probably feel overwhelmed and aren't able to come up with a one-word answer that encompasses the entire emotional experience of the day. And here's what I've noticed with urban middle schoolers specifically, is that they've learned to be careful about what they share and with whom they share it with. So they're scanning for safety before they open up. And they want to know, are you actually going to listen to me? Or are you just asking because it's something you feel like you should do? So here's what we got to do. We've got to get strategic about our questions. Instead of just saying, how was your day? Which, let's be honest, even we don't want to answer. I know I don't. If someone's like, how was your day, Jeff? I'm just going to say, fine. I've got my one-word answers all locked and ready to go. So we've got to do three things. The first is be specific enough to be interesting, be open enough to go a little bit deeper, and then safe enough to start with. So let me share a few that actually work that I use on the daily. So instead of how was school, say, what's one thing that happened today that you didn't expect? See the difference? The first one feels more like an interrogation. The second one is curious. Instead of like, they come in, they seem a little off, and you're like, are you okay? Ask, hey, what's taking up the most space in your head right now? These aren't like magic words. There is a system and a formula, but these conversation starters give kids a chance and permission to share what's actually on their minds instead of just these one-word answers, or they're trying to summarize the entire emotional experience of the day. Here's something else I've learned. It's not always what you ask, but when you ask. The time you have right after they get home from school, or you're picking them up right after school, or they're transitioning from one big thing to another, that's probably not the moment to try to have a heart-to-heart, deep conversation with them. But you know when is a good time? Is when you have a little bit more space to interact with them, and when you don't have to make eye contact with them. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive because we want kids to learn, especially middle schoolers, how to have active listening skills, and we want to teach them to make eye contact with each other. But to have meaningful conversations, a lot of times the best thing to do is have a third thing in front of you, something that you can do side by side where you're not even having to make eye contact with each other. Let me give you an example. So there was this kid, an 8th grader, a few years ago that was part of our middle school program, and I've been trying to talk to this kid for months, and he was the king of the one-word answer. Fine, okay. And then one day we were cleaning up after the program, and he was helping me put some stuff away, and I just asked him, I said, bro, what's one thing that adults don't understand about kids your age that you wish they did? And guys, this kid talked for like 20 minutes, and he felt like he had all these expectations of acting grown when he still felt like he was a kid, and how adults always were asking him about high school and what he wanted to do after he graduated in college, when he didn't even know what was going to happen the next day. So this conversation just helped set the tone and the foundation for future conversations. It really worked. Let me tell you about another kid. This is an 8th grade girl, and she had this gift for knowing exactly what to say to get adults to like her. Within minutes, she'd have staff or volunteers or whoever thinking that she had life all figured out. She was insightful because she was intelligent, she was funny, but she never had like real answers. A real version of her never came across. So for weeks, I'm trying to talk to her and she's giving me the same performance. Until one day we're in the van after program doing drop off. We've got a bunch of kids in the back. She's sitting in the passenger seat, and for about 10 minutes while the kids and staff in the back were distracted, without even looking at me, she's like, "Jeff, I'm really scared. I don't think that I'm gonna be able to live at my house anymore. I think they're gonna kick me out." And instead of saying a bunch of like big therapist, counselor type things, I just said, "That sounds really scary." And for the next like 7 to 10 minutes, we just talk about it. And not once did we make eye contact. We kept our eyes on the road, but she felt safe enough because of that, the third thing, she felt safe enough to have that conversation with me. And it laid that relationship foundation for future conversations down the road. So here's what you can try this week. Like, here's something you can actually do to have better conversations with middle schoolers. The first thing is pick one middle schooler, not 5, not your whole class, not all the middle schoolers that are part of your family. Just pick one middle schooler and then pick one of those conversation starters. You could say, you know, what's one thing that happened today that you didn't expect? Or if you could replay one moment from today, what would it be? And try doing it in a side-by-side moment. Not when they're walking in the front door from school, not when they're stressed about homework, but when you're genuinely curious and have time to listen to the answer. Don't expect magic on day one. These kids have been trained to give short answers, and it might take a few tries before you get that conversation going. But you got this if you actually are intentional about hearing what they have to say. Here's what I know. Middle schoolers are wild, they're complicated, and they want to connect. They want to be seen and known and valued. And they're just waiting for adults like you and me to ask the right questions. And trust me, when you find the right question, you're going to be amazed at what they have to say. So our kids, especially these urban kids we work with, they are worth the effort. They're worth learning how to ask better questions, and they're definitely worth the conversations that happen when we take that time. You got this.